Pro Football Focus. Here's my thing with Pro Football Focus. They have these grades and they have these advanced stats, and they're supposed to be like very like just analytics. But then they have articles like this that anyone could write, like ranking the best head coaches in the league based on vibes and feelings. So, okay, I got vibes and feelings. They put Kyle Shanahan number 2 in the NFL. Here's what they say about Kyle. Shanahan has yet to get over the hump and win a Super Bowl despite holding leads in one as the offensive coordinator of the Falcons and 2 as the 49ers head coach. But he is the main reason why the Niners are the favorites to come out of the NFC once again in 2024. They led the NFL in averaging 0.16 EPA per play in 2023. And while they ranked 12th on the defensive side of the ball, Shanahan was bold enough to make the change from Steve Wilkes to Nick Sorensen, a defensive coordinator, heading into the season. That's good news for Sorensen's future career prospects, as 3 of Shanahan's former coordinators are currently NFL head coaches. Full stop. Not a lot of analysis there from Pro Football Focus. Second best coach in the league after Andy Reid. What do you think? Harbaugh 4, Jim Harbaugh 4, Sean McVay 5,
McVay 5,
John Harbaugh 4. Excuse me, John Harbaugh 3, Sean McVay 4.
What's a little sacrilegious is Mike Tomlin at 5. I think he's a little too high, to be honest with you.
I agree.
But what I will say is I agree with this if we're talking about the regular season. You know, like if this is just, you know, what happens in between week 1 to week 17, fine, have at it, right? And quite honestly, this is exactly what they're talking about. I mean, they're the favorites to come out. That's a season prediction, right? They're the favorites to go to the NFC, the NFC Championship game. Again, another season prediction, right? But for some reason, they don't seem to talk about anything that goes on in the playoffs, how we finish the playoffs, or what we're going to do once we get there if we see likely opponents. My biggest thing about us is that there's the marketing side of the 49ers, and then there's like a shift to when people really start talking about the Niners, when the coast is clear, the well is dry, and it's time to just really get plain and talk about them. I liken it to like LeBron's last year. When LeBron finally retires from the NBA, you're going to see a lot of people just having a real conversation about LeBron James on ESPN and all of your networks, because it's going to be over. He's gone. We're moving on. But for what it's worth, we all got to hold the banner right now because he's a cash cow. And talking about him right now and pressing and propping him up is good for business. And that's how I see lists like this, you know, especially when you have Mike Tomlin at 5. Like, come on. Like, that's got to be a regular season list. Like, what has he done in the playoffs? Right? Like you have floor at 6.
I don't like this list at all. I don't understand it. To me, it's like, hold on. Shanahan, how can you put him over other coaches who probably would have won a Super Bowl with this roster by now? That's what I keep coming back to. Like, say what you want about Kyle and how good he is at this or that. He's got the best team. He's had the best team for a few seasons. He hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. You can make whatever excuses you want, but I think a grip of coaches in this league, I know a bunch of coaches in this league have won Super Bowls with worse teams. They have.
Yeah.
So until he wins one with this team, it's hard to put him over Sean McVay. It's hard to put him over John Harbaugh, who have won Super Bowls with their current teams. I don't see how you could actually rank Kyle over either one of those guys. And Jim Harbaugh, I think I take Jim over Kyle too. So that's maybe Kyle's 5. He's in the tier of promising coaches that haven't won Super Bowls yet. I don't see how you could put him ahead of those. He's not a top tier coach. He's a tier 2 coach.
You know who's
LaFleur and McDaniel and Saleh and D'Amico.
Yeah. You know who's lightweight a better coach than Kyle? And it's like been kind of hiding in plain sight for a very long time. And the only reason why we get away with this distinction is because of the regular season. Sean McVay. I think Sean McVay is a better coach than Kyle. I think he's a better head coach than Kyle.
Yeah.
And I think because Kyle beats him in the regular season, that he gets that gets shrouded over the fact that when it counts, Sean McVay wins. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, man. Like, and on top of it, I just kind of feel like also Sean is also he was one of the first people to kind of like turn like the like put 24s on like the on the Chrysler 300. Like, that's why I like Sean. Like, he ghetto for real. He's the first dude to take Kyle Shanahan's offense and just like rip it apart. He's like, well, I want the run game. I do not want the pass game. I'm not even like trying to follow this. I'm going to completely throw it away. And he worked with it. It's like, it's a little disrespectful if you look at it, because if you know the system, you can see that he literally doesn't even follow what Kyle does passing wise. And if you just look at the history of them being in Washington together, the real quarterback coach of Kirk Cousins was Sean McVay. It wasn't Kyle. Sean McVay developed Kirk Cousins, and people tend to forget that.
That's a good point. I mean, with McVay, it's like you said, Kyle's the regular season champ. He's the best coach. He's the number one coach in the regular season, and he's proven that. He's a better regular season coach than Sean McVay over and over again. But that's not really what we're judging here. And let's compare what they've done in Super Bowls. They've both gone to 2. McVay went to 1, lost with Goff, decided Goff wasn't right, and got another quarterback, handpicked Stafford, put together like an all-in team, went all in, Odell Beckham Jr., Jalen Ramsey, whatever it took, and won the freaking Super Bowl, got it done. And then they had to rebuild, and they had a down year, and Niner fans kind of laugh at them like, oh, don't you wish you were consistent like us? Like, well, no, because they're champions, and they're rebuilding, and they have a young, really gifted team right now. So that's the difference.
Who jilted you?
I mean, when Kyle lost and he decided he needed a quarterback, his solution was Trey Lance. It didn't work. Yeah. I mean, he'd be fired right now if it weren't for Brock Purdy. So there's a big difference between McVay and Kyle.
Right. And then, all right. So for those who think that, I mean, because there was a great debate. I would implore everybody to go over to Ryan G. Hensley's channel when he gets a chance to watch the debate between Rob Stascarero and Brother Bob. It was a really good show. And you know, basically the premise of that debate was like, is Kyle Shanahan a great coach? I think he's a very good coach. He really is. He's a very good coach. He's not great though. And one of the reasons where you hear the debates for Kyle, you hear about all of the superlatives, like how many appearances and how many NFC championship games and the points and how many yards they lead and all of these good things. And, you know, all of these things are supposed to be propped up that make him great. But I would just ask you just one question. Okay. What active coach that does not have a Super Bowl is considerably across the board renowned as great? And if it's just Kyle, then that says everything about the debate.
It's just Kyle.
He's in a class of his own. So
like Jim Harbaugh has a national championship, and I don't think he's universally regarded as great.
Yeah. Jim Harbaugh
is a guy with a championship.
He's not universally regarded as great. No. So if you're going to push the narrative that Kyle is a great coach, then you also have to admit the fact that you see him as if you see no other coach in the league, because you can't even compare a scenario that matches that. What other coach is considered hands down great? It is what it is. This winning the Super Bowl is just a formality. It needs to happen, but it will happen someday. Gonna happen, kinda. I don't know. But name the other coach.
Here's what annoys me. So another article that came out recently yesterday, NFL.com, ranking the best offenses in the league. Number 1, the Niners. Number 2, KC. And when he gives the analysis of the Niners, it's all about Kyle. Kyle Shanahan's a star. The biggest strength of their offense is Kyle's system. He's just so ahead of the game in terms of run pass. It's so balanced, and you can't tell, and he keeps defenses on their heels, yada, yada, yada. Despite all the talent they have, like 6 All-Pros and an MVP candidate quarterback. It's all about Kyle. And then when they get to the Chiefs and they talk about their biggest strengths, Patrick Mahomes, with like a barely a mention of Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes is great, but Andy Reid is also the best coach in the league and the best offensive coach in the league.
And one of the best developers in the league and one of the best talent evaluators of offensive linemen in the league. Like it's not just like, and that's the thing that's crazy to me, Grant, is that, I feel like we only, the scope of this debate is corralled by the deficiencies or the attributes of Kyle. But we can't break out of anything that Kyle doesn't show us, because for some reason that would show that Kyle's deficient at it. It's like, no, like Andy Reid develops very good offensive linemen and they all stick. Like that's something that we can't even talk about with Kyle.
That's a great point. Also, Andy Reid doesn't have to be the star.
No.
And I think if the play caller is the star of your offense, it's not the best offense in the league. It should be the quarterback. And one more thing. If I were to ask you to describe Kyle Shanahan's system, how long would that take you?
Like maybe 30 seconds.
30 seconds. You know exactly what it is, and it's constant year to year. If I were to ask you to describe Andy Reid's system, what would you say?
It would take a while, because you would have to talk
flexible.
About how he uses Patrick Mahomes, then like their run game and how different it looks every time they utilize it. Then you would have to talk about the screen game. Then you would have to talk about personnel groupings, like the fact that they found their Debo when we were using a Debo the whole year, and they're like, you know what? Let us try this out. Let's get a wide back and see how this works out. Then they're gonna win a Super Bowl with one. It's like, it's crazy.
Like the Niners have all these wide receivers, but they're going to be 21 personnel no matter what, because that's what their system is. Right. Last year, the Chiefs were messing around half the year trying to figure out what they did well. They were like, oh, you know what? This team is a 2 tight end team. I had 3 tight ends. We're going to run the ball with Isaiah Pacheco. Like, you know what? So, it's the funniest thing. That's what we're doing this year, because it doesn't matter. I'm super flexible. Kyle is not. Yeah, he's not going to be a 3 wide receiver team. He's not going to be a 2 tight end team. He's going to have a fullback on the freaking field, because that's what he does.
I mean, that's exactly what you're going to see year in and year out. He's married to that system. He knows how to talk in confidence with that system. He knows it like the back of his hand. It's a lot more than just football when it comes to that. It's more of process. It's how his bedside manner, how he coaches around it, what he expects. It's his validation. It really is it's how he proves and conveys to his players that I'm one of you, because I know this and you don't know it as well as me. And I'm going to always have this. But I'm going to tell you, when the rubber meets the road and your players start understanding the tricks just as well as you do, then it's going to start saying, all right, man, well, can you adapt? Are we going to be able to change this? I mean, how about a new skill set for me? Like, what are we doing here? Right. So more of the same, Grant.
Last thing I want to say about these head coaches, and a way to rank them. With Kyle, I mean, there's so many things you can look at with Kyle because he calls plays, but a lot of it comes down to the quarterback. And I think the best coaches in the league, whether they're offensive coaches or defensive coaches or special head coaches, they're able to take their quarterback and make him seem better, more confident than he really is. I mean, look what John Harbaugh does with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is flawed, but on that team, he's a 2-time MVP. Look at Sean McVay. Like, he's got Matthew Stafford playing the best of his life, more confident than he ever was in Detroit. Andy Reid, I mean, he did it with Mahomes. He did it with freaking Alex Smith. He did it with Donovan McNabb. Kyle couldn't have done that. Kyle is always fighting for the spotlight with his quarterbacks in ways that the top coaches don't.
Well, we saw what happened with Donovan McNabb in this system when he got traded to Washington in 2010. He got benched He got benched for the first time in his career. Within maybe like 6 starts, they benched him. And he hated the offense. He did not like how it was basically stifling his skill set. He talked about it ad nauseum. You can go back and look up all that stuff. So yeah, man, it's gonna be more of the same unless Kyle figures out a way how to pivot. It's the adaptability in like the big games, right? It's not, you can get in the process from like week 1 to week 10 and, get a wrinkle, maybe get a team who understands your process, maybe have a bad loss. But the playoffs is really all about hat on a hat football. And like really scheme, the way we play football is for situations of a game, but you can't win an entire game going first quarter to fourth quarter doing that and expect to win. Like these guys are the best in the world. It's not like, I don't think people understand that when we say that Kyle is a genius, then what is Andy Reid?
Yeah.
Like if we say Kyle's a genius, then what is Ben Johnson? If we say Kyle's a genius, then what is Sean McVay? Like, you got to understand, like, he's among other people that know just as much, if not more, about the game. But that's not the point when you're talking about being an expert. It's how you wield those things. Go ahead, Grant.
Well, I just want to bring it back to McVay one more time, because it's easy to point out why Kyle's not as good as Andy Reid, but I think it's tougher to talk about why he's better, why he's not as good as Sean McVay. And it's obvious, like, Sean McVay has a Super Bowl, but it's like, look at how they coach. Kyle is negative, and he kind of needs an upbeat, rah-rah guy as a defensive coordinator to balance him out. Like, D'Amico was great at that. Saleh was great at that. McVay doesn't need that because he's both. He's upbeat and he knows the offense. So there's an emotional element, an energetic element that McVay has, that the Harbaughs have, that Kyle doesn't. That's a limitation. Then in terms of the way people look at him, Kyle has an all-star team and no one holds it against him. When McVay won the Super Bowl in 2021, everyone mentioned, oh, well, they got Odell Beckham Jr. It's a bunch of mercenaries on this team. Like, there's always a yeah, but with McVay. But Kyle, I mean, it's like he could go get another freaking all-pro tomorrow, and people be like, oh, man, watch out for Kyle this year, man. He's the best coach in the league.
Think about the riches that we get. Like, for what it's worth, he wasn't what he was supposed to be once he came out. But, dude, we traded for Chase Young and Christian McCaffrey back-to-back seasons. Like, there's not a narrative at all where anybody says that Kyle has way too much. Nobody brings that up. That is not even in the zeitgeist at all.
It never happens. And there's more. Yeah. Like, look what McVay did last year with rookies. He had Puka Nacua playing like an all-pro week one. If Kyle had Puka Nacua, how long would it have taken Kyle to get him the ball consistently as a featured guy? Because he doesn't play rookies. And then there's the last thing. His offense isn't balanced. He throws less than every other team in the league. He has all these weapons, and the entire offense goes through one guy, McCaffrey. That's not genius to me. Okay, I'm done.
I'm
done. I thought of all the reasons. That's it.
Yo, I felt like the screen closing closer and closer. I was like, all right, and another thing. I was like, all right, okay.
Okay. Other than that, I think he's just a flat out great coach.